I mentioned earlier about vote for Biden, get Harris.
Right.
And there's because all this stuff, all the big tech was saying, oh, Hunter Biden laptop with Russian disinformation, lie, lie, lie. None of this is true. That's not true. No, no, no. And now it is.
Mm.
If you want to know which are the best cryptocurrencies to hodl, to trade in, and for how long, then take a look at Token Metrics. Token Metrics helps crypto investors build profitable portfolios using artificial intelligence-based crypto indices, rankings, and price predictions. Use my affiliate link and you get a 10% discount on their plans. You also get 3 months free if you sign up for the yearly plan. And you can do a 7-day trial for just a few dollars. Link in the description below.
And the FBI have been investigating. Stories are coming out. Twitter's not deleting them as far as we know. Some are making it. Right? Hunter Biden, his laptop. And then Joe Biden has to sign somewhere or declare an oath that he's not an agent of a state. And there's all this stuff that's coming out with regards to Hunter Biden and how Joe Biden is compromised by his contacts with the Chinese. So then, well, let's get rid of Joe Biden because the guy's not up to much, really. He shouldn't be. He's not fit enough to run president. He's just not well. Man's in decline. So then we get Kamala Harris. And then there was something I heard on some analysis about Obama saying that, he would love to do a third term, but through somebody else.
No, that's what he's doing.
So let's talk about Hunter Biden and Kamala Harris and that.
It's been very clear to me since like February that Joe Biden was running as a proxy for Barack Obama.
Yeah.
He's the proxy for the Obama wing of the Democratic Party, whereas Mike Bloomberg was the proxy for the Hillary Clinton wing of the Democratic Party. Biden won, Hillary lost, she's irrelevant. And then they picked Kamala Harris because that's the person they actually wanted to win in the first place, per Scott Adams, and he was absolutely correct about this. And that's why Harris was the pick, and that's why they didn't care whether they campaigned or not or any of this stuff, because they knew they were going to just steal the election and install who they wanted as president, because, there can be no democratic choice against the European treaties, or the American oligarchy. I mean, the Chinese PLA. I mean, I'm sorry, they can do this all day long. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say straight away. I mean, I think the intention always was to go for Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris was a complete failure in the primaries, so they wheeled her out. Then they brought in Joe Biden, who, as I said, was the Don Quixote figure that they put in front. He won the election for them, except of course he didn't even campaign or anything like that. But he was, let's put it like this, he was not so unpopular that they couldn't convince it. They couldn't package him as the winner. And now I have to say this: it's very remarkable how all this information about the Hunter Biden affairs is coming out just after the election has been won. And can I just say that it is incredible that it has happened so. If this had been a functioning system in the United States, Joe Biden would have been told about these investigations months ago before he became a candidate. He'd have been told about them. He would have been warned that, it might be a problem for him to stand as a candidate if he moved forward because his son was under investigation. It was possible that these investigations might expand. There's apparently 4 investigations underway. The Democrats would have been informed. The Republicans would have been informed. Donald Trump would have been informed. In theory, in reality, none of these people were informed. If you are telling me the Democrats didn't know, if you're telling me Joe Biden himself didn't know, then, as I like to say, I have a bridge to sell you. So, having said that, they went forward with this fiction that Joe Biden wasn't told, that he wasn't aware. So he was able to say things during the election which are flat out untrue. That there is no evidence that his son had done anything wrong. That's what he said. He went in one of the television debates and referred to that with approval to that letter by those intelligence officers saying that it was all Russian disinformation. He was able to do that. He was able to do that because he was not formally told. Now it's all coming out. I think it is going to be very, very difficult for Joe Biden, if even a fraction of what we're hearing about these investigations is true, to remain president of the United States for very long. So at that point, we get Kamala Harris, who's going to be the vice president. That was something we will have to see.
I go back and forth on who's leaking this information now, or who's one. Like, the media being willing to talk about it now is a clear sign that Obama has greenlit it's time to get rid of Joe.
Yeah.
That's what's going on. It's also a statement of their confidence in pulling all of this off. Because if they weren't confident of pulling this off, they wouldn't be talking about this now. They'd be holding this back until after Inauguration Day.
Yeah.
So they feel they've got this thing sewn up and buttoned up. Now, again, whether or not Trump has something else up his sleeve, we don't know. Again, but it's very clear that Biden will be an illegitimate president, and because he is as illegitimate as he is, it's not going to throw any shade on Kamala Harris, because what do we have her for? Getting on her knees in front of Willie Brown? It's not that big a deal. After Donald Trump, it's really not that big a deal, right? So, I mean, her record is horrific. Her affect is creepy, and I don't want her anywhere near me, near the launch codes. But I mean, anybody who thinks that at this point, I don't even know that they're telling Joe Biden the truth at this point about what's going on. I mean, honestly, Joe gets up there, he says what he's supposed to say, and then he's like, "Can I have my Jell-O now, please?"
Yeah. Well, Tom, that's a good point. Joe may have been told. He may not be aware. He may not remember because of his mental decline.
Jill, he hasn't won the election.
Yeah. Okay, but Jill will know. Jill Biden will know. The Hunter family will know. So it's there, right? So and then Kamala Harris coming in. I mean, she got no delegates whatsoever. She's deeply, deeply unpopular amongst Democrats. And
black people hate her.
US electorate. Sorry.
Black people hate her.
Yes.
Okay, because she's not black.
People love Obama.
Yeah.
All of them did.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, what is she? She's quarter black?
No, she's
like quarter black carrot on Steve Crowder show, right?
Okay.
Sorry.
The key point I just wanted to say about this is that this wire pulling is exactly what elites that have lost all connection to the real life of their country engage in. If this happens in the way that we've just discussed, if at the end of this process Kamala Harris, who, as everybody you just both correctly said, is deeply unpopular, widely disliked, clearly somebody who nobody would not have won an election by herself, and who didn't win an election by herself, is leveraged into the presidential chair, the cynicism and anger that there is already out there will grow quite possibly to a critical mass dimensions. I said before, when we were talking about the events in the other country, in Russia in 1999, that it took a salient event. I said a financial crisis. In that case, it was the war in Yugoslavia. Perhaps in this case, it'll be a financial crisis and the leveraging into power of Kamala Harris. And that may be when the moment comes when people say enough. Yeah. So just bear that in mind.
Because
they pass a stimulus bill and there's no money in it for people.
Well, listen.
Yeah. Well, and then
everybody gets thrown out of their home, and all the landlords get their stuff nationalized. Yeah. But you got to remember that what they're planning on doing, and you're absolutely right, Alex, that these people are tone deaf. What they're planning on doing is they're planning on saying, "Look, I know you're hurting. I know this has been terrible, and what we're going to do? We're going to forgive all your property debt. You just transfer your property to us, and then you'll be able to walk away debt free." That's what they're going to do, and they're running the thing with student loan debt right now. Now, honestly, they should just get rid of the student loan debt. It's a complete drag on the millennial generation. And then stop giving them any more money, and then watch the universities collapse, which they won't do because it's a primary vector for indoctrination. It doesn't. Yeah, you're absolutely right that no matter what happens here, the timeline for their being in control of this is very short.
Yes.
My problem with all of this is that this is exactly what China and the European Union want.
You're going to say so what are you going to say about the relationship between Europe and China and the US, which we alluded to right at the beginning, and then we start talking about what's happening in Europe with Hungary and Poland and Brexit?
Well, the way I see this, and I don't know that there are very many people who see it the way I do. And sometimes when I go off on one of these rants, people look at me like I'm a lunatic. But the truth of the matter is that I really do believe that this is all a big, the European Union is setting the United States and China against each other. He fights so that we can win. And when I look at what's happening in the U.S., the oligarchs in the U.S. are all Eurocentric, or all Europhiles. They all believe in the European Union. They all believe in the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the climate change and all of this stuff. And it's all the same thing because they know that's where they're going to be able to continue to roll through their rent-seeking behavior, right? They're going to be able to roll that over into the next system. So that's what Biden's for. It's what Harris is for. Obama is a true believing commie who believes in all of this. And the European Union is the new version of communism. And so is the Klaus Schwab's Great Reset and the whole 9 yards. So when you really start to look at this, what I'm most frustrated with is that what we've just spent the morning discussing so far is the collapse and the collapse of a terminally corrupt American republic, right? And I'm angry about that. And I'm willing to accept the fact that that system needs to be torn down and rebuilt. Happily tear it down and rebuild it. What I'm not willing to accept is that we tear it down and we send all the money and all the capital to a bunch of feckless European freaking eugenicists. Like that I'm not down with. I'm not down with rolling all of the wealth of the West into the hands of a bunch of European colonialists who are just commies, or who are using communism as a means by which to sell their new version of colonialism and reestablish their colonial kings of Europe of the 15th and 16th century. I'm not down with that. I'm down with tearing down the empire. I'm down with no more statecraft and destroying and keeping Central Asia in the 19th century and all the rest of it. I'm absolutely all for all that. I am not for giving it all to the Europeans. Sorry, my family left Italy over this stuff back in the 1900s and became Americans because that system was supposed to be better.
I'm going to say something because I obviously live in Britain, but I've also got my foot in the European Union because Greece is still part of the European Union, incredible enough. And my wife is part German, so I go to Germany regularly and I travel around. I think what is important to say is that the situation in Europe is very bad. It's not, and it's getting worse, by the way. It's not, it does not give me the impression of being a strong, self-confident, purposeful thing that is working towards, a situation where it's able to scoop the winnings, if you like, from a collapse in the United States. I just don't get that impression at all. I get the impression of deeply mediocre leaders. The quality of leadership in Europe today is dreadful. Arguably even worse than in the United States, and that says something. If you don't mind my saying so, but I mean, it really is very.
Those are fighting words. Like, we have the most incompetent. We have the most incompetent leadership. Come on, man, you and me fight, right?
But I mean, you look at people like Ursula von Leyen. You look at indeed. The sort of Italian leaders, Giuseppe Conte, even Macron and Merkel, who are the sort of dwarfs who you talk of as giants because all of the others are so pathetic and insignificant. Exactly. I mean, and it's very, very difficult to see them at the end of the day gaining those sort of advantages. The other thing I have to say is Germany, which is of course the central country in all of this, it's very difficult to convey to Americans especially, and indeed to British people, what a profoundly provincial mindset Germany actually has. German politicians rise through the Länder system. I mean, they're very much within their own Länder, and they don't really look beyond this. They know.
What do you mean by Länder system?
The Länder, Germany is a federal system, rather a little bit like the United States is, and German states are called Länder, lands. So you have places like Bavaria, you have places like Saxony, you have places like all these places up and down Germany, and it is fairly decentralized, not as decentralized as the US is, but fairly decentralized. And a lot of power is basically very local. And when I say local, the extent to which local businesses and local politicians in Germany are interconnected with each other is something which even Americans might find difficult to understand. So, for example, if you're talking about a state government in, say, Rheinland-Pfalz, I mean, they will see it as their job to provide subsidies, for example. I mean, tax subsidies to a German industrial group there if it's in financial trouble. This goes on all the time, and this is their horizon. Now, this comes with a whole bunch of, if you like, hardwired assumptions. One is that the Germans do things better than everyone else. So that's one thing that the Germans are hardwired to think. The second is to a remarkable extent, Germany not only knows better than everybody else, but is better ethically than everybody else. So if things are not done properly in Italy or Greece or France, it's because the French are corrupt, Italians are self-seeking. There is a certain degree of superiority relative to every other country. And of course, there is also within this an assumption that the European Union is somehow absolutely perfect, provided Germany leads it, and Germany leads it for its own interests. I mean, it's sort of all based around this. It doesn't have the imperial mindset which people in Washington and London and Moscow and Beijing are capable of. So, and that's why they're making one mistake after another. So there is the impulse to integrate, but it's an impulse which I think Germany will only take so far, because they will only take it as far as it will benefit them. But I don't think it really is ultimately going to be functional, and I don't think it's purposeful. China, which I have also visited, I have to say, I found that very different. China, I mean, this is a system which I would absolutely not want to live under in any way, but I cannot pretend I wasn't impressed by it. It's very efficient, very purposeful, and I can absolutely see China with a completely different perspective to the world, and I can very easily see the Chinese pushing their agenda in all kinds of ways. But so I think China possibly. I simply find it very difficult to imagine the European Union and all these political leaders. And remember, I come from a political family in Greece, and as a result, I have political contacts in many countries, especially in Southern Europe. These are just not very impressive people. That's all I can say. I mean, they really are not. And neither of the people who run the banks, neither are the people who form the opinions in the media. It's difficult to say how mediocre it all really is.
And that's what's so maddeningly frustrating, that people that they still have this sense of inevitability that surrounds them. Like, no, we really are better than the rest of you. And this is what I mean by this, is that what you just described, that German mindset, that's actually the most dangerous part of it. I've identified from the beginning that this is Germany, that they're just going to continue doing this because they know that they're right.
Exactly.
And that's the worst kind of communist totalitarian impulse that there is. Mm. And that's why, see, like the Chinese, you can negotiate with the Chinese.
Yeah.
And you can negotiate with somebody like the Chinese as long as you give them the opportunity to save face.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're very Asian. But with Germans, I don't, it's going to be very difficult. They're very much my way or the highway. And and they will do everything imaginable in order to get to that point. I've been saying everywhere, I'm like, and the whole concept that we should be turning over the keys to the candy store in the United States to a bunch of German eugenicists is insane, because it worked out so well the first time. Like, what are we doing here? No. Like, this is not even ancient history. This is recent history. This is within our own our parents' lifetimes that this was done. And and now we've got Dr. Evil, like literally Dr. Evil, a German eugenicist, and his Hungarian best friend, like trying to, and the Hungarian best friend's son, to be accurate, Alexander Sorov, like trying to shoehorn this into the future. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's going to work.
No.
Because they're deeply mediocre and bad at what they do, but they're also completely ideologically driven.
Yes,
the Chinese are not ideologically.
No, they're not at all. I mean, they're
not.
No,
they're not, and that's the main difference. I argue with this with my political friends about this all the time. I'm like, the Chinese are worrisome.
Yes,
but they're not ideologically driven the same way European communists are.
Yes, well,
and that's the problem.
The fundamental difference is that the Chinese use their ideology. They're in control of it. The Europeans are controlled by their ideology.
Thank you.
That is a fundamental...
That's a very efficient and pithy way of saying it.
Yeah.
Excellent, Alexander.
I think the other thing that tends to reinforce this, by the way, just one other thing to say, just on the history, which is, of course, that the Germans always fail in the end because they overreach.
course.
They always overestimate their own resources, and they take on more than they can, and it all falls apart for them. They never learn, but that's what they do. And the third thing is, if we're talking about Europe, I mean, we have this deeply corrupting fact that we live in a part of the world where we're full of monuments and palaces and great churches and art and culture and all of these things. And we imagine ourselves to be the heirs of all of this. And that gives us a sense of enormous superiority over everyone else. And he believes that we are somehow better. And that means that we don't look at what we do or what we have, what we are or what we have become. We ride to an extraordinary degree on our past. And that is unfortunately a very, very, very bad thing.
It's a terrible thing because what Europe achieved in the last millennium was amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
But at the same, it's truly stunning. I was talking with the people about this, someone about this, previously in a podcast recently. I'm like, stunning. I would love to, finally at a point in my life where I'm like, oh, I finally am economically stable enough that I can go see the world that I write about. I'm not going to Europe anytime soon. Those people are crazy.
Yes.
Like, sorry, I'm just not doing it.
They'll vaccinate you, Tom. So I want to move this on and let's talk about Brexit.